Hello. Thank you so much for coming to this great event, Confer.no, and thank you so much for joining my presentation. My name is Aiko Yamashita, and I will try to take you through the journey on from DNB on our cultural transformation and our journey towards ethical AI and data. And for that, first, I will need to set some backstage into our journey towards a more data-driven culture. And that journey starts in 2018 when the CDO office was established at DNB. And that was in 2018, where we actually focused on what Ada Miller, our CDO, calls protect the bank. And so we reframe regulations as best practice. In 2019, we made it stick, we institutionalized. So we implemented best-in-class analytics and governance platforms. And we established a community of 50+ data scientists and 40+ data stewards or guardians in our bank. And then from 2020 on, we improve internal processes and revenue grow. So this is kind of a short entry. And yeah, of course, we will follow our strategic priorities. And how did we do this? Because I guess we all need a backstage in order to understand how our data journey is connected also to our ethical or responsible AI journey. So protect the bank, how we did it. It was started by the emergence of GDPR and data compliance regulations. So we established a CDO organization that was in 2018 or end of 2017. So roles and responsibilities with respect to data ownership and governance were established corporate-wide. And of course, we worked towards establishing processes and guidelines, in particular for GDPR compliance in our organization. And of course, making data compliance as a part of DNB culture is still continuous effort. So another stage was make it stick. And that was done through competence building and building a community. How we did it? So first thing we did was to establish a physical community space where our data scientists could share experiences and challenges and discuss in a physical setting. And this is, of course, pre-COVID. Technology infrastructure, we established our own data insight infrastructure built on different components from Amazon Web Services. And we did it from the ground and code-based. So this is a very important achievement alongside other data governance and analytics infrastructure that was put in place. We implemented an information and communication hub through different platforms, including Slack, the corporate Facebook or workplace, as we call it, and other knowledge hubs. And last but not least, we ramped up on upskill programs, as we call them in DNB, for data scientists and data workers. And we are continuously holding workshops on diverse topics, going from ML ops to visualization and database storytelling. And grow the bank. So towards the end of this 3-year strategy that started in 2018 and approaching 2020, the plan is and was to streamline analytics initiatives in a much more efficient way in terms of understanding their value potential and connecting them to financial and strategic targets, and having a more mature demand process with respect to how to provide support to different business and operative areas, with respect to not only the platform services, but also in terms of guidance and coaching or co-running the different projects. Also the creation and reuse of data products. We are working towards a model of more similar to what we call a data mesh, where we create and take responsibility for different data products, and we share them across the organization. But we also are responsible for so each of the different product or data owners are responsible for the quality as well. And of course, data and tech-driven efficiency has been another cornerstone. And that is one example I can give you is how our AML unit has leveraged the usage of graph technologies. In this particular case, we're using Neo4j. And this has driven efficiency increases in terms of analyzing cases that used to take weeks to a couple hours. And finally, top-line revenue growth. And we do have a leverage here in terms of access to data from our position in the market in terms of transaction volumes and market share. So we are leveraging our data and technology in order to increase our top-line revenue. And all this is very much like a pit stop. And this is an analogy that is often used and very liked in DNB, also because of the fast pace of the financial business. But then it's also an important reminder and it makes us reflect on the immense power that we are yielding and also building. The same way as Formula One is an incredibly powerful engine, and as such, it should be looked with care. So, what are the risks we foresee in data and AI? Of course, there are unintended effects due to lack of control and understanding of mechanisms or behavior AI solutions. Reputational damage, and this is a very serious one, which could lead to loss of market share. Non-adoption by customers, so products may fail because of lack of transparency. And could be even more serious, boycott from civil society or getting our legitimacy reduced by our actions. And of course, misuse, criminal or otherwise, of data and AI technologies. So today, I want to tell you a bit about that parallel track that has been going on besides our journey towards becoming a more data-driven culture, because we also want to build a responsible data culture. So how? And I'm going to tell you 3 topics or 3 areas that we have been working with. The first one is the Responsible Digital Leadership Project with Stanford University. And the second one is on a DNB seminar on responsible use of data and AI. And the third one is how we are attempting or starting to leverage data and AI to fuel the transition to a sustainable economy. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about this responsible digital leadership. And this is sort of a consortium that has been established by the Center of Human Rights and International Justice at Stanford, including several renowned financial institutions. And the main purpose is to develop a case-based model and a concrete process for innovating responsibly through data and other technologies. And this has been a little bit like our journey, and I just want to take you by the hand on all these different steps or happenings that form part of our constellation of activities. So in 2018, the CDO was established, and we had the first contact with the people from Stanford from partnership post that we had at Silicon Valley. That was in 2019. And then the collaboration agreement was signed. We held several upskill programs on data ethics. We integrated a topic into our community meetups. As I mentioned, we're having these regular data science community meetups in DNB. And in 2019, in autumn, we officially started the project. And as part of that project, or parallel to that project, we conducted a seminar, a national seminar on responsible data and AI hosted at DNB. In May 2020, in the mid of the COVID crisis, we established the data ethics section, formally a formal role within DNB. And probably I can say that DNB is one of the few organizations that has a formal data ethics role in DNB, in an organization. So in 2020, towards the autumn, we start working on these guidelines for responsible AI. We had this report from this case study, and we realized that it was too high level in the sense that we needed something more down to earth and concrete that we could operationalize at DNB. And that's why we started a series of workshops that could use the guidelines as a starting point, but also operationalize these guidelines into DNB's context. And that's how we have been working a series of workshops. And the main idea is to develop a strategy for responsible data and AI. And formally, we would like to, we are planning an informal greet and meet with all the consortium members where we can share our experiences throughout the project. And you may think, wow, yeah, a strategy on responsible data and AI. And what should such a strategy contain? And we want to share our thoughts around it. And of course, the first thing that is most important is the vision, the values, and the principles, the why. And this has to be tightly knit with the corporate values and our principles. Of course, there is a need to really understand what are the risks in general, what are the risks that we might have in terms of probability, and then we develop a gap analysis, like, okay, which are the areas where well weathered, which are the areas that are that need more work. So this will give us information on what to focus on. And roles and responsibilities, because a strategy is cannot sit in a vacuum. It needs to have it needs to land on people, real people doing work and being held accountable. And of course, methods, toolkits, guidelines, and these are so important because yeah, the world is full of well-intended people that may not be always best prepared. And I think that what we call as toolkit is going to be the development of such a toolkit in order to guide the conversation, in order to, whether that will be checklist or whether that will be some sort of questionnaire or some method, it's going to be super important for us in order to make the best possible decisions based on the knowledge available. The second thing I would like to mention, it was this seminar was held in January 2020, right before the first lockdown. And it was an impressive line out. We managed, and this is also a testimony of how a company like DNB, when it wants to, it can gather the crowds, and we can sort of put a lot of people in the same room and have these discussions, important discussions for our society. So we have between guests, participants, panelists, and speakers, we had this huge constellation of public, private, and government organizations participating. And we had the morning talks where experts would take on different topics. We had a panel debate including many public and private actors and academic actors about what is the role that business, academia, and policy leaders should play for responsible data and AI. And we had also working groups. So we had different working groups, and we put different people together in order to discuss different topics and try to come up with a joint strategy on these 4 topics, which is algorithmic governance, assessment for biases, accountability for autonomous AI, and enforcement of AI regulation. And these were extremely rich and insightful. And I'm just gonna take 5 minutes to give you some very quick summary on our learnings from this process. And I'll be really happy to answer questions offline or even afterwards on some of the learnings. And I think this is It's an extremely rich experience for us as a bank, because it gives us the possibility to look at this topic from a broader perspective and not just from our standing as a financial institution. So the big five, as I want to call them from the seminar, I'm talking about the big five learnings or sort of conclusions we arrived together from all the participants, were the following. We need standardizations of AI definitions. We need definitions and requirements. This is kind of an extension of the first one for AI explainability. We need to work towards process and best practice for algorithmic audits. We were discussing the establishment of an AI ethical council. And we discussed, last but not least, we found about open discussion and rules on data sharing and ownership, which is a very contentious topic. I will go very quickly through all these five topics. I'll be very happy to elaborate further offline. So, standardization of AI definitions. I think we're talking a lot about these AI-related topics like unfairness, polarization, but we don't have a common agreement on what we exactly mean by it. And I think we found out that we need to expand on concepts such as transparency and trust, because these terms have multiple perspectives, but also multiple dimensions. So transparency does not have the same meaning across the different stakeholders. And this is something that we need to take into account when working towards transparency. What types of fairness exist and which contexts are applicable? I think that the definition of fairness also needs to be contextualized and made concrete so that we can actually work with it and also measure it and prove that we are being fair. Definitions and requirements for AI explainability. Explainability is context dependent, and that means that it depends on who is receiving the explanation, who is being responsible for explaining. It also has to do with the risk, which is a formula, right? It's just a consequence times the probability of risk materializing. So depending on all these things, explainability may necessarily have different levels of requirements. So we need to have an open discussion and a consensus on what is sufficient explainability for different contexts. And of course, documentation is extremely important. How do we document our explanations, and how do we prove that we have explained things properly? Algorithmic audits. This is a heavy one. The conclusion we reach toward the discussion is that we need to have a systems perspective, and the term algorithmic audit is also misleading because it kind of tends to give focus into the algorithm, that part of the system, as we have to take more systemic approach. There were extremely interesting discussions with DNB, because they are experts on safety, and we definitely see a huge potential there for expanding on existing processes like risk management practices, safety certification and standards, in order to include aspects like AI safety and trustworthiness. And last and least, we definitely need self-assessment tools or centers of knowledge, because I think companies need to have the possibility to do self-assessment before undergoing either sort of official government assessments or any other types of assessments. Ethical Council, this was an interesting one. We found that although here it's more at the national level, and maybe we could have some influence, but it's really something that maybe the policymakers need to look into. But inspiration can be drawn from the Norwegian Biotechnology Advisory Board, which is a cross-disciplinary board of experts. And also some lessons can be extracted from the health regulation, where topics like health ethics and biotech were tackled by creating citizen panels, and actually ended up with ethical concerns incorporated in some laws. Data sharing and ownership. This was a very contentious topic, particularly because it's one of the cornerstones of the Norwegian strategy on AI. And this is a precondition for us being competitive in the global market in the years to come. So public-private data is actually an exchange of assets, thus requires transparency and ideally should be regulated, which means that if data is considered the new gold, why we are not treating it as such? And this was a really interesting observation from many of the participants. Also, since this was also interdisciplinary working groups, there were lawyers present there, also many of them experts in data and AI. One of the comments was that the mapping of the need of national regulation on lawful basis, on a sector basis, is needed. So data is not created equal. Data comes from different sectors and has different characteristics. So probably we need a sector by sector basis. And another discussion we had was that aspects like confidentiality or data minimalization principles should give precedence to purpose and lawful basis, because confidentiality and data minimization are principles that are there in order to safeguard rights such as privacy. And but it might be cases where other rights or other ethical concerns are more important, such as fairness or non-discrimination. So this was a really interesting discussion there. And that was January 2020. And then COVID came. And it was a complete game changer for absolutely everyone. And this was quite interesting because this showed the extent to which ESG, or environment, society, and governance aspects came into play all together at once. And as Fiona Reynolds, who is the CEO of Principles of Responsible Investment, said, this crisis has shown how interconnected everything is. And that's what ESG is all about. And it's kind of interesting because if you see it from a financial perspective, the pandemic and its economic fallout, it triggered a skyward surge on sustainable, responsible, impactful investing over the next 12 months. And in general, all the companies which have had focus on ESG aspects have performed so much better than their counterparts. And this is a mind opener. And what is the stage for AI, or what's the role that AI and data is going to play in this new journey towards ESG compliance and ESG driven investment and finance? Well, data and AI will definitely play a central role in both collecting, verifying, analyzing, and reporting ESG performance. And this is kind of where we are keeping our eye, we're keeping an eye on that ball. And for us, the need of connecting or aligning ESG and AI/data is quite straightforward. Of course, in terms of the environment, we want to leverage AI and data for reporting and supercharging green products and initiatives. So this comes very much along our top line revenue. Society, and this is something that we have been already working from the very beginning of our journey into data culture. AI and data should be developed responsibly, right? And governance, of course, this comes with GDPR, and it comes with having a good control over what is being done at home. What are we doing with our data, in particular to withhold our customers, shareholders, and society's trust? This is a short presentation, so I will not be able to dive into different thoughts and different topics here, but I would like to close up this glimpse into our journey with 3 thoughts that I think I hope you can take back home with yourselves when we talk about responsible, ethical AI and data practice. And there are basically 3 things that I would like you to take home. Think culture, think diversity, and think champions. And culture, in the same way as we talk about data-driven culture, a digital organization, we need to think about how we can actually promote the idea of doing the right thing, using technology for good, right from the grassroots level. And this is something that we are exploring, in order to implement and teach and develop knowledge around ethical design principles, which is pretty much like the Maslow's triangle, but when it comes to the bottom is really to respect the human rights, and then the second level, improve the human effort, and third, at the end, human experience. And unfortunately, a lot of actors nowadays, global actors, especially in the tech domain, are actually having the triangle upside down. So unfortunately, but we realized that beyond any sort of regulation, compliance, or process, the culture is essential for if we are to achieve our goals. And one thing that I keep reminding people is that ethics is not yet another red tape. It's something that you keep here very close to your heart and your mind. And that is really culture. Diversity. And I would like to quote this text from a very interesting nonprofit organization called Data for Black Lives. And in their first inaugural conference, the speaker said, designers get to define the objective and the neutral. And that definition never has to be articulated, just understood. And we have come to understand objective to be associated with white and male. What a powerful word. What a powerful sentence. It really tells us that in order to achieve our goals on creating good products for the societal good, we need to have different perspectives, and we need to have more voices included. And one of the biggest examples I see nowadays is really how the probability of injury in car accidents was, up to now, extremely high on women and groups that were not represented by the dimensions of the dummy doll that was used for testing safety in cars. So this is an extremely compelling example on the importance of having different voices and perspectives at the table where we are designing and creating our new our future solutions and products. Finally, I would like to say think champions. And champions are such important figures. And in our case, I would like to actually mention our CDO, Adam Miller, was actually headhunted by DNB. And I think that a lot of the work that we have been able to achieve in the area of responsible data and AI wouldn't have been possible without his backing. So I think it's extremely important to have this champion in the organization who actually listens to the what the people have to say. And throughout the discussions that we had in our organization about the need of having a formal role on data ethics, Aidan took the call and actually established a role in the organization. And also in terms of budget and championing the different initiatives and activities, we really need someone who is actually has some power in order to make things happen. And I think that this is extremely laudable, and we need to recognize and highlight these figures. And in order to encourage this kind of behavior in other leaders across different organizations and also at the society as a whole. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm really looking forward to your questions and comments. Thank you so much.